the architecture of freedom, the art of living beyond consumption, the great illusion, and the secret no one talks about. When people ask me which of the two of us, Warren or I, is more frugal, I always allow myself a slight smile. The question itself reveals a superficial understanding of the nature of money. But if I answer honestly, looking reality in the eye, then in matters of personal consumption, Warren unquestionably surpasses me in asceticism. He turned frugality into an art form, while I simply stick to common sense. But behind this simple comparison lies a fundamental truth I intend to reveal to you today. I'm going to tell you something no Wall Street financial advisor will admit. More than that, they will deny it fiercely, because what I am about to say undermines the very core of their business model. Their industry is built on complexity, on creating the illusion that money management is secret knowledge accessible only to a select priesthood in expensive suits. But the truth, naked and unpleasant for them, is this: you do not need much money to live well. That statement seems counterintuitive in our success-obsessed world. Most people who sincerely believe they need a six-figure income just to survive are not actually suffering from a lack of money. They are suffering from a severe form of mathematical illiteracy applied to their own lives. I have watched this tragic pattern for 70 years. For 7 decades, I have seen smart, talented people confuse lifestyle inflation with real necessity. And this confusion, this fundamental error in calculation, costs them decades of freedom. The script is always the same. It repeats with the frightening inevitability of a Greek tragedy. A person begins earning more. It seems like the solution to all problems has arrived. But in some mystical way, his needs immediately rise as well. The moment he gets a raise, he instantly finds new, elaborate ways to end up broke again. They think the problem is in the income column, but the real problem lies in the self-control column. You cannot outrun your own foolishness simply by increasing the size of the check. Foolishness scales along with income. Let me be perfectly direct, setting political correctness aside. Living on a low income is not a story of deprivation, suffering, or monastic self-denial. It is a story of clarity, crystalline and merciless clarity. It is the understanding of what truly matters to your existence, as opposed to what others are trying to sell you. Most people have never once sat down at a table with a blank sheet of paper and honestly calculated, what do I actually need for comfort? They simply absorb society's expectations the way a sponge absorbs dirty water and call it reality. That ignorance is ruinously expensive. When I was young, I learned a principle that changed everything, a principle that became the foundation of my wealth. The formula for guaranteed unhappiness is having constantly rising expectations. If your expectations rise at the same speed as your income, you are trapped. You are a hamster on a wheel running faster and faster while the scenery never changes. You are locked in forever. But if you are capable of showing restraint and keeping your needs stable while your income rises, that gap, that delta between what you want and what you have, becomes your freedom. That gap is where real wealth lives, not in the number in the bank account, but in the space between what you earn and what you spend. Most people do the exact opposite. They allow their lifestyle to expand instantly with every dollar they earn. A new car, a bigger apartment, more expensive restaurants, more subscriptions. more obligations. They think they are moving up the social ladder. In reality, they are simply moving sideways on an ever more expensive treadmill. Let us face the math no one wants to admit. If you earn $40,000 and spend $40,000, you are broke. If you earn $200,000 and spend $200,000, you are still broke. You are just sitting on softer furniture. The absolute number does not matter. Only the gap matters. And you create that gap by mastering expenses, not by endlessly chasing income. The anatomy of needs and the tyranny of desires. Now let me tell you what living on a low income actually requires. It requires intellectual honesty, brutal honesty in distinguishing needs from wants. 90% of what people call needs are wants normalized by aggressive marketing and social pressure. You do not need a new car. You need reliable transportation. Those are different things. You do not need a huge 5-bedroom house. You need shelter. You do not need the latest designer clothing collection. You need to be clothed and protected from the weather. The moment you separate real biological and functional needs from socialized desires, the required level of income drops dramatically. But that separation requires psychological strength most people simply do not have. People cannot bear being different. They physically cannot tolerate looking poor in the eyes of others, even if that very appearance is what allows them to build real wealth. Social proof is one of the strongest human impulses. Financially, it is catastrophic. You look around, everyone is spending money foolishly. And obeying the herd instinct, you start spending foolishly too. You mistake the direction of the crowd for wisdom, when usually it is just a collective hallucination, a mass psychosis of consumption. Let me give you a structure, a hard framework of principles for living magnificently while having very little. Principle 1: housing as a fortress, not a display case. This is where most people destroy their financial future before they have even begun to build it. They buy or rent far more space than they need, purely for the sake of signaling status. A young couple without children does not need 3 bedrooms. A single person does not need 2. But people tell themselves, what if guests come? I need an office. I want to feel successful. That is not planning. That is paying for ego at premium prices. Here is what I learned in my 20s. Your housing should be the cheapest acceptable option that satisfies your actual requirements. Not your ambitions, not your dreams of parties you will never host, but your real needs. Can you sleep there safely? Can you store your belongings? Can you maintain basic hygiene? That is the threshold. Everything beyond that is luxury. Luxury is wonderful if you can afford it. But if you are trying to live on a limited income, luxury is a tax on your future. When Warren and I were young, we lived in modest places. Not because we were destitute, though we had little money, but because we understood the concept of opportunity cost. Every dollar spent on excess square footage was a dollar that could not work for us, could not compound. We were willing to look modest in order to become truly secure. Most people make the opposite trade. They look rich while remaining vulnerable. Principle 2: transportation as a capital devourer. Cars are among the greatest destroyers of middle-class wealth, not because transportation is unnecessary, but because people buy far more car than they need. They take out loans on assets that depreciate faster than they can repay the debt. They buy new cars when used. Ones would work perfectly. They replace them every 3 years for no rational reason except boredom and the desire to show off. If you want to survive and thrive on a low income, you must be ruthless about transportation. Buy used, buy reliable, buy boring. A 10-year-old Toyota will get you to the same place as a new BMW, but it costs a fraction as much and does not scream to the world that you make poor financial decisions. The real cost of a car is not the sticker price at the dealership. It is insurance, fuel, maintenance, taxes, and most importantly, the opportunity cost of capital frozen inside a rotting piece of metal. When you calculate the true cost of ownership, you discover that most people spend 20 to 30% of their income simply moving their bodies from point A to point B. That is insanity. Cut those expenses in half, and you have just given yourself a huge raise without earning a single extra dollar. Principle 3. Food for the body, not for laziness. This is where small daily choices add up to giant annual losses. People do not realize how enormous the sums are that they burn through by eating out, ordering delivery, and buying prepared foods. They call it convenience. I call it a tax on laziness. If you are serious about living on a limited income, you cook not occasionally, not on holidays, but constantly and systematically. You plan meals. You buy ingredients, not finished dishes. You accept the fact that convenience costs money you do not have. I'm not suggesting you eat poorly. I'm suggesting you eat intelligently. Rice, beans, seasonal vegetables, eggs, chicken. These are foundational foods. They are nutritious, cheap, and if you learn how to cook, they can be delicious. The difference between regularly eating at cafes and cooking at home is easily thousands of dollars a year. For a person with a low income, that is not just savings. It is life-changing money. That is your starting capital. Principle 4. The entertainment industry versus real life. Modern life has convinced people that they need constant stimulation. Streaming services, concerts, bars, endless events, travel for Instagram photos. All of it is presented as an essential part of a full life. That is a lie. Entertainment is fine. Dependence on entertainment is poverty. There is a huge gulf between enjoying yourself sometimes and structuring your entire life around consuming paid pleasures. You do not need Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and HBO all at once. You do not need to go to the bar every weekend to pour away a week's worth of savings. You do not need to fly to the other side of the world to prove to yourself that you are living well. What you need is the intellectual honesty to admit that most entertainment is simply distraction from a life you do not actually like. When your life is filled with meaning, you do not need so many distractions. When your days have purpose, you do not need constant external stimulation. But people have built lives so empty that without purchased entertainment, they would be left alone with themselves. And that is frightening. The alternative is to build a life that satisfies you from within. Reading costs almost nothing. A walk costs nothing. A deep conversation with a friend is free. Reflection is free. Learning is free if you use libraries and open resources. That is not deprivation. Often these activities bring far more satisfaction than expensive alternatives because they engage the mind instead of numbing it. Principle 5. Clothing as a utilitarian tool. You do not need much. You need clean, neat, durable clothing. Not fashionable, not branded, not new every season. The moment you stop trying to communicate status through the fabric covering your body, necessary expenses fall almost to zero. Buy quality basics that last for years. Ignore fashion. Fashion is an industry designed to make you feel outdated every 6 months. Wear things until they are truly worn out, not until they fall out of trend. Wealthy people understand this. They often wear the same things because they are not trying to prove anything. It is the insecure middle class that constantly needs new outfits as a form of doping. True confidence does not require external confirmation in the form of a logo on your chest. Principle 6. Subscription vampires. This is the slow bleeding that quietly kills financial health. A gym membership you never use. Subscription boxes you forgot about. Apps you opened once. Insurance with unnecessary add-ons. Every recurring payment is a permanent claim on your future income. It is a promise you made to keep paying, whether you receive value or not. Audit every subscription. Cancel ruthlessly. If you do not use it weekly, you do not need it. Most people spend hundreds a month on recurring charges they barely think about. That is thousands a year. For a person with a low income, that may be 2 months of life, 2 months of freedom handed over to corporations for nothing. Principle 7. Social immunity. This is the hardest one because it is psychology, not mathematics. Your friends will pressure you to spend. Your family will judge your choices as stinginess. Society will interpret your frugality as failure. You must build immunity to this, or you will break. People who successfully live on a low income and build capital have a powerful internal locus of control. They do not need external approval. They do not measure their worth by consumption. They can calmly watch others spend money foolishly without feeling the slightest desire to join them. That psychological strength is more valuable than any financial technique, because techniques are useless if you do not have the discipline to apply them. And discipline requires the ability not to care what other people think. Principle 8. Debt is poison. If you live on a low income, any debt is cyanide for your budget. No exceptions. You cannot afford to pay interest on anything. No credit cards with revolving balances. No consumer loans. No installment plans for phones. If you cannot pay cash for it right now, you cannot afford it. Period. The math is simple and brutal. Every dollar you hand to a bank in interest is a dollar that cannot be used for life or for investing. Interest is a penalty for impatience, and when you live on limited resources, impatience is catastrophic. Most people living paycheck to paycheck are there because they borrowed from their future. They financed consumption. Now they are paying for past decisions instead of funding current needs. That is the debt trap. Once you fall into it, getting out is incredibly difficult because every dollar goes to servicing debt instead of eliminating it. The solution is harsh. Do not go in. If you are already there, get out at any cost. Work overtime, sell things, do whatever it takes. Debt is financial quicksand. The longer you stay in it, the deeper you sink. Principle 9. Reserves as oxygen. Even on a low income, especially on a low income, you need emergency savings. Life will hit you. The car will break down, a tooth will start hurting, your job will be cut. If you have no reserves, these ordinary life problems turn into catastrophes. You go into debt and miss payments, and the spiral turns downward. The only way to create a reserve on a low income is to treat saving as a non-negotiable expense. Pay yourself first, even if it is $20 a month, even if it seems meaningless. You are building both a habit and a cushion. Start with $500, then $1,000, then 3 months of expenses. It will take time, but it is achievable if you are disciplined in the other principles. Every dollar you did not waste on unnecessary housing or food goes here. And once you have a cushion, life changes psychologically. You stop living in constant anxiety. You gain room to maneuver. Margin of safety. Margin of safety is everything. Principle 10. The income strategy. Living on a low income does not mean resigning yourself to it forever. It means managing what you have while working in parallel to improve your situation. But maximizing income must be done intelligently. You cannot sacrifice your health, your family, or your sanity for money. That is just trading one problem for another. The goal is to find work that is sustainable and pays enough to cover needs plus savings. For most people, that is much more achievable than they think. The problem is that they have inflated their needs to such a degree that no reasonable income will ever satisfy them. But if you have applied the previous 9 principles, your needs are so low that a modest income works perfectly. From there, you invest the surplus, even if the sums are small. The goal is to build assets that, over time, replace your labor. That is the path from survival to freedom. The psychology of victory over yourself. Now let us talk about psychology, because technique without the right mindset is doomed to fail. Living on a low income requires a complete rewiring of your relationship with money and success. You must stop measuring yourself against other people. Comparison is a thief that steals satisfaction. When you live frugally, comparison will destroy you. Everyone around you seems richer. Better cars, bigger homes, vacations on islands. What you do not see are their debts, their stress, their lack of savings, their fragility. You see the facade, but miss the foundation. Most people who look rich are actually broke. Most people who look modest are safe. Train yourself to ignore appearances. The only comparison that matters is you today versus you a year ago. Do you have more savings, less debt, more skills? That is progress. What the neighbor drives does not matter. People adapt to circumstances quickly. This is called hedonic adaptation. You think a big house will make you happy? It will for about 3 months. Then it becomes your new normal, and you want even more. You think a new car will bring joy? It will for a week. Then you stop noticing it. That is why lifestyle inflation is a trap. You are chasing a feeling that disappears instantly, but the price remains forever. A wise person understands this and refuses to play the game. You are not depriving yourself by living on less. You are investing in future optionality. Every dollar not spent is a soldier working for you forever. That is not sacrifice. It is strategy. Let us talk about time. Low expenses give you what high-income people often lose: time. If you do not need to work 80 hours a week to maintain an expensive lifestyle, you have hours for what truly matters: reading, thinking, developing skills, spending time with loved ones. That is the hidden advantage of a low-expense life. You can choose work that pays less but offers better conditions. You are not desperate for every paycheck. That is a form of freedom. Money alone cannot measure. The mathematics of freedom, example A and B. Let me give you a concrete example. Two people, both 30 years old. Person A earns $80,000 and spends $75,000. Person B earns $35,000, but through discipline spends only $25,000. Who is in the better position? Most people will say Person A because the income is higher. But look at the gap. Person A saves $5,000 a year. Person B saves $10,000 a year. Person B is building wealth twice as fast while earning less than half as much. After 10 years, A will have $50,000, excluding interest, while B will have $100,000. If both invest, B will reach financial independence years, if not decades, before A. That is the power of the gap. Income does not determine wealth. The difference between income and expenses determines wealth. You can be wealthy on $30,000 if you spend $20,000. You can be poor on $200,000 if you spend $200,000. Mathematics does not care about absolute numbers. It cares only about the difference. That is why I say, focus on expenses first. Fix the leak before increasing the flow. Reduce expenses to a reasonable level. Develop the discipline to live within those limits. And only then, if income grows, will you truly win, because you will not inflate your lifestyle. The tactical execution plan. Philosophy without action is just entertainment. Here is how to do it in practice. Total audit. Do not estimate in your head. For 1 month, write down every expense, every coffee, every stick of gum. The very act of writing changes behavior because you cannot hide from numbers on paper. Most people are shocked when they see where the money is actually going. Brutal sorting. Divide everything into categories. Now ask, is this necessary for survival? If not, it is a candidate for elimination. Start with the easy wins. Sequential optimization. Do not try to cut everything at once. This month, deal with food by learning to cook. Next month, kill the subscriptions. In the third month, review insurance and service plans. The 24-hour rule. Never buy anything on the same day you first wanted it, except food and medicine. Wait 1 day. If the desire remains tomorrow, maybe it is justified. You will be amazed how many desires evaporate overnight when reason returns. Fight the sunk cost fallacy. Do not keep a membership or an item just because you already paid for it. That money is gone. The only question is future spending. If you do not use it, get rid of it. Automation. Set up an automatic transfer to savings on payday. You should not see that money. If you have to transfer it manually, you will fail. Make the machine make the right decision for you. Epilogue. The freedom to choose. Remember, this is not forever. Living on a low income is a temporary strategy for reaching financial independence. Once you get there, you will have options. You will be able to spend more if you want to. Or, as happens more often, you will discover that you do not want to, because you have learned that happiness does not come from spending. Most people who go through this process never return to insane consumption. They have discovered the peace of financial safety. They are not willing to trade that for things. That is the final victory. Not reaching the point where you can buy everything, but reaching the point where you do not need to buy anything in order to feel complete. When you master the art of living on little, you master a fundamental skill of modern life. You learn to be happy with enough. And enough, if understood correctly, is abundance. You are no longer playing the game. You have won by refusing to play by someone else's rules. That is real freedom.